And it's live on YouTube, and I'm just checking that it's coming through live everywhere.
Corrine, where are you? Where do you live?
And it is. We are now on live.
Yeah, and I can confirm that. I see it on YouTube.
And I'm just checking that it's coming. Yeah,
Good
so
to see you, Patrick.
just mute your YouTubes, or if you're watching somewhere else, be sure it's muted. So we're in session 3.2, part of the space philosophy and outreach section. And I guess today, this is our last session on tourism, living, sports, art, and culture in space. And I think we're going to start with, let's see who's first up here on this agenda. Is this Makoto? Am I pronouncing your name properly?
Shall I? Hi, Kevin. Shall I introduce the session just for a moment?
Sure, go ahead.
I and Jerry are due to chair the session, but he's stuck on a train, he said, so that he'll be arriving a little bit later. So just to introduce myself, I'm Patrick Collins, and currently I'm the chairman of the SSTJ, the Society for Space Tourism of Japan. I was invited to be this by the guys who run some travel companies who set this society up about 10 years ago. And so great to see you all for this session on space tourism and related issues. And we're running a little early, so that I think Mr. Arai, he said he'll arrive at 9 o'clock. So I think we're 9 o'clock in the morning here in Japan. So just wait a couple of moments for him to, are you there?
Well,
Arai?
he is here.
He is
yes,
there?
I'm here, Patrick.
Oh,
morning.
Okay, great. So
Yep.
let me just introduce the Mr. Arai. If I just a moment. He worked at Dentsu for many years. Dentsu is the largest advertising company in Japan, advertising and marketing company. And while enrolled in the Dentsu Space Lab, he proposed space marketing at the Japan Marketing Academy in 2015, which will utilize marketing perspectives and knowledge to popularize space initiatives. In 2017, he established the Sora Tourism Promotion Council with former astronaut Naoko Yamazaki and other founders. And Sora is a word in Japanese, which means both sky and space. So he'll explain this. So the Sora Tourism Promotion Council is a kind of combination of future space tourism and existing space-related, sky-related tourism activities. In 2018, at the Second International Space Exploration Forum, ICEF2, he formed Team Sora Gourmet with the cooperation of the JAXA Space Food Team, and exhibited and presented under the theme of thinking about food in the space exploration era. And in 2020, he introduced Sora Gourmet with Hoshitori Starnight at the Tottori Sand Dunes, which are a famous tourist spot in Japan. And currently he's engaged in activities to create and extend what he calls Sora culture. Okay, so please, Mr. Arai.
Oh, thank you, Patrick. It's my great honor and pleasure to have an opportunity. I'm afraid I cannot show you my slide because the host is not allowing.
Hold on a second and let me fix that.
Yep. When you are here in Japan, it's 9 o'clock in the morning. So good morning and maybe a good afternoon and a good evening. Yeah, slide is not coming yet. Well, still I'm waiting. Okay. Is it okay?
That's great.
Okay. As introduced by Patrick Sam, my name is Makoto Arai. I'm a founder, one of founders of Sora Tourism Promotion Council, and also a member of SSTJ. Yep. And today I'll talk about the Sora Tourism. This is the outline. And as mentioned, Patrick San, space marketing. It's a perspective that can contribute space development. I proposed it in Japan Marketing Academy, and it has two aspects. This bipolar structure is similar to that of sports marketing. One of is sports marketing of sports to promote sports industry and provide goods and services of sports. The other is marketing through sports or marketing activities utilizing sports resources. This off and through can also be applied to space marketing. Marketing of space is to promote space industry and provide goods and services via space, mainly satellites. Marketing through space is making activities utilizing various resources of space. Through marketing, activities are organized in 4 areas: media development, advertisement and promotion, sponsorship, and tourism promotion. And today I'd like to focus on tourism promotion. The Sora Tourism Promotion Council was established in 2017. It is a non-profit collaboration of public, private, and academic organizations around Japan related to Sora tourism. Sora covers 3 zones. The first zone is the universe, galaxy, and Milky Way. The second is near-Earth space, where people can travel by rocket. We call them both of these uchu in Japanese. And the third zone is the sky, aurora, and sea of clouds. We chose a generic name of Sora to cover all 3 zones. This Sora is the letter character of uchu. The founders were Professor Agata as leader, Professor Akiyama, an expert in rocket system development, Naoko Yamazaki, a former JAXA astronaut, and myself. This is our vision and logo. As you may notice, this logo is based on a gold-plated disc by the Voyager satellite. We have 3 objectives. First, to provide information and know-how related to Sora. We assume there are 3 layers of Sora fans. The third general layer is the widest people who like star and space, but are not so interested in details. In 2018, we conducted Sora Tourism Marketing Survey. It is estimated that the current population of Sora tourism participation is about 8.5 million. The number of the people who are expected to participate in the future is about 40 million. This is about a third of Japanese population. This confirmed a large potential. The second objective is to improve the functions of sending and receiving tourist information. We constructed a portal site that aggregates all different types of information related to Sora. The third objective is the expansion of the market. We have started to send and receive information not only on the web, but also at actual events. Next, let me introduce some unique Sora culture activities in Japan. Recently, the Ishigaki Yaeyama Islands and Kozushima Island received certification by International Dark Sky Association. A space-related anime, Your Name, was a big hit 2 years ago and screened it in 85 countries. There was a scene where the Tiamat planet fell to Hida. So a lot of people visited the location in Hida. This is one of the spots in Japan. And this is our collaboration with Anime Tourism in Ishigaki Island. This is a brochure. And also, many characters using stars and universe motifs have appeared so far. Space Battleship Yamato, Galaxy Railway 39, and many subculture contents. G Satellite Project is underway to show Gundam's support for the Tokyo Olympics 2020 from space. A model of Gundam was sent to the ISS to send a message of support to the Olympics. Yes, Tokyo Olympics is just around the corner. Sora gourmet food is an indispensable part of traveling. We had a Hoshitori Star Night at the Tottori Sand Dunes last autumn as a part of Japan Tourism Agency's New Tourism. At this event, Sora Gourmet was first released. It is a cuisine that uses the motif of the universe and comprises ingredients from the earth. Next, let me talk about space travel. Moon travelers and moon residents will join together instead of separately and enjoy together. I name it co-enjoyment. By connecting with family and friends online from Earth, they will be able to share valuable experiences, such as meals and attractions together. It is interesting to take a bird's eye view of the 3 zones of the Earth and the Moon, including the ISS and Gateway. First, let's consider the integrated resort, IR concept. Namely, the various attractive spots are gathered in one area. In 2020, Spaceport Japan announced the Spaceport City concept. It has the character of an IR facility, such as commercial facilities, space amusement, hotels, and restaurants. This Port Plus Collective Space IR facility does not end in one zone on the Earth. It is combined with the Moon Port and Lunar Tourist Facilities, Moon City, and the ISS and the Gateway. And it can be regarded as a concept consisting of 3 zones. It will be even more magnificent by constructing a mechanism that allows many people on Earth to participate via internet. Let's take a closer look at the 3-zone space IR concept and consider it as comprising an economic zone, a commercial zone, and a living zone. The name of this ultra-wide area zone may be called Greater Earth. Here I name it Gumumbo Zone that combines global and moon. As a name that regards the Earth and the moon as one unit. The creation of co-enjoyment, a new way of enjoying travel and various activities in space, is a space marketing strategy from the B2C perspective. The Sora Tourism Promotion Council will further promote space travel by encouraging the satisfaction of the needs and wants of the general public as well as the concept of responding to dreams and realizing them. Thank you very much.
Patrick, you're muted.
Yeah.
Thanks. Thanks very much, Arai-san, for this great introduction to Sora tourism, which is a kind of a new way of looking at the whole concept of space tourism. And I love this word, Gemunbal, instead of global. So I'll then pass the chair to Jerry, who I think is here now.
Yes, thank you. It's been a bit of a struggle getting back from London, and everyone, I apologize for the formal wear, but I've been at an awards ceremony down in London. I mentioned this yesterday. Tonight, we gave out the latest Sir Arthur Clarke Awards, which are regarded as the space equivalent of the Oscars, highlighting work done by people in all kinds of categories, industry, academic, lifetime achievement, and so forth. And for the international award, the winners were the UAE's Hope Mars team, and we had a video message from them, so it was really quite something. Now today we're looking even further out, and thank you, Makoto, for that presentation, and I look forward to seeing some of those activities. Patrick's now going to talk about some other interesting activities that I'd like to see. Many of you will know Patrick from these seminars and others. He's chairman of the Society for Space Tourism of Japan. Space tourism has been a major interest of his for many, many years. It certainly was when he used to live over here in the UK years ago, before he decamped to Japan. I mean, space tourism, space sport seems an obvious follow-on from that kind of topic. Now, it's, oh gosh, it's 9 years ago now that we had the Olympics in London. They're just about to start it in Tokyo. Incidentally, I remember the first Tokyo Olympics back in '64. And there was a big get-together in Patrick Moore's garden, and I gave a talk about the Lunar Olympics, somewhat tongue-in-cheek, I should say, rather tongue-in-cheek, though, even though I did give an accurate calculation of how high you really could jump on the moon. I'm not sure if Patrick's going to include that, but it'll be interesting to find out what he tells us. So over to you, Patrick, for the Lunar Olympics.
Thanks very much, Jerry. So I'll just share the screen here. I'm trying to get this. Is this Kevin, is the, if I just share the screen here, my screen should come up, I think.
Yes.
Not yet.
Yeah, you should be able to share your screen.
Okay, here we go. Is that visible now?
No, not yet.
No.
Oh, I've got it on the screen here. Okay, I'll just go back.
Oh, that's interesting.
Be sure to click the green button at the bottom and then choose your window and then do the share in the lower right.
That's right.
Nope, we still don't see it.
Got one. Oh.
Uh-huh.
There it is.
Yes.
Got it.
Okay, so then
Yes.
to the A. Are we up now?
Excellent. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, then. Thanks. So I'll start then. Thank you very much for the introduction. I think everybody knows that there is now a lot of work planning returning to the moon and plans to build bases there. This is just a very recent statement by China and Russia saying they're going to build a permanent research base at the South Pole of the moon by 2030. Well, this is terrific. And you know, the US is planning the Artemis project, and Japan, India, and European countries are going to participate in these. So things are really beginning to move. And I and colleagues have this kind of outline timetable for travel, that the 20s are going to be the time of suborbital travel. The 30s will we see orbital travel, and so lunar surface tourism should be in the 2040s. And the key to this, of course, is reusable passenger transport to orbit, which we still don't have. And unfortunately, we no really clear view of it because SpaceX's Starship is not optimized for carrying people to Leo and back. It's really a cargo ship to take people to Mars. So we still need fully reusable passenger transport to orbit. And it's worth remembering that the German engineers flew a winged suborbital rocket in 1943, and they designed a piloted version, but this was not ever produced. And they were prevented from continuing this project. But if they had, we would have had suborbital travel by 1950. So we're just about 70 years behind schedule. But this technology is available. And for orbit, really two-stage vehicles are much better. So two-stage space planes, of course, vertical takeoff and landing are also possible. But these are perfectly possible with modern technology. So we just have to get this underway and things can carry on. Now, Bigelow Aerospace, you know, wants to operate hotels in orbit, and their first hotel module was attached to ISS already in 2016. So as soon as we have reasonably, low-cost reusable passenger vehicles traveling to orbit, the hotel industry is going to boom. And one thing which will drive hotels is to build bigger and bigger chambers, because a large chamber allows all sorts of entertaining activities, particularly sports, because anyone who's a fan of any sport will love to see how it will go in zero gravity. And these kind of big structures, there's been lots of work on this. They're ideal for robotic assembly and maybe 3D printing as well, because they're made up of lots and lots of components, very similar components. So mass production of large structures in orbit will happen very quickly once we have low-cost access to orbit. And there's really no kind of limit to how big these structures can go. And as you know, there's lots of fiction, but also non-fiction investigation of how this could be done, And then talk about lunar travel. Well, of course, this started 50 years ago. The only thing difficult about it is to get the cost down, which simply depends on fully having reusable vehicles. And this is a report which inspired me as a student, 1976, full of fascinating papers about what can be done on the moon once we get into doing it. And so I would say if lunar bases are built and as on the current schedule in the late 2020s, then lunar construction technology can be developed through the 2030s and everything will be fine. Now for lunar tourism, we need 7 bits of infrastructure, 3 on Earth, 3 on the moon and 1 in between. So we need orbital spaceports on the Earth, which are much like an international airport, but with massive fuel propellant storage because they use a lot of propellant. We need vehicles going from the spaceports to orbit, and we need orbital kind of transit hotels, if you like, where people come up on the shuttle from Earth and then swap into the vehicles which go to the moon. And then we'll have these kind of liners, really, space liners, which travel between Earth orbit and lunar orbit, continue back and forth. And then we need transit hotels in lunar orbit, shuttles down to the lunar surface, and we need, of course, spaceports on the lunar surface. So these 7 bits of infrastructure are needed for lunar tourism. And just to give you an idea of a couple of things which are happening in Japan, Toyota already a couple of years ago announced this collaboration with JAXA to develop a lunar cruiser. It's really like a, it's bigger than that figure in that picture. Yeah, basically it's a big camper van, but to operate in a vacuum on the lunar surface. And the nominal use is 2 people for 6 weeks, independent living on the lunar surface. Toyota, remember, is 100 times bigger than JAXA. So the Toyota deputy managing director announced this project, and he said, our engineers love this project. So it's great to see. I knew they would, you know, and it's just going to sort of snowball, I suspect. And they'll need to make Toyota's a commercial company. They'll be making different versions. And so this is the construction version, but she means the construction on the lunar surface. And to give you a feel, Honda too is already collaborating with JAXA on lunar hydrogen and oxygen and power generation, because both Honda and Toyota have hydrogen cars now. So this is, this is only preparatory, but it's already starting. Okay. And so why will tourists visit the moon? Well, for all sorts of reasons, of course. I mean, many, many different reasons, but low gravity sports will be a major attraction. And if you haven't read this story, The Menace from Earth by Robert Heinlein, I do encourage you to. It's on the web. You can easily find it. It's a short story, a lovely love story between 2 teenagers, but their hobby is flying in low gravity on the moon. And just to show this isn't fantasy, here's a picture published by NASA in 2006 of a lunar stadium. I'd love to talk about this picture for about 20 minutes, but there's no time. But first of all, just notice the advanced construction. Okay, these huge expanses of glass and very thin metal members between them. So this is not the first generation stadium, and it's outside with vacuum on the outside. But up on the upper right corner, you can see people are flying, so it's a well-recognized fact that humans are going to fly on the moon. And so we're going to have, the flying races. Imagine you've got sprints, long distance, 3D flying slalom, dog fighting. People are they'll have a whole flying Olympics, I suspect. But in addition, I'm sure that women will want to do synchronized flying. I mean, they love synchronized swimming and flying ballet. It's really a whole new world with a massive potential popularity. This is just a quick drawing of synchronized flying, you see, inside a dome. Well, as I said, the picture just now was a very advanced dome. I think a more realistic one is this yellow dome will be for a sports thing, but inside a dome city, there's a lot of talk about dome city, which is made of basically aluminum and glass. And if you think of this dome here, about 600 meters in diameter, well, this would require about 20,000 tons of aluminum extrusions to hold the glass and about 100,000 tons of glass panels, in round figures. And these are the annual output of a typical factory today. 20,000 tons of, if you're going to build aluminum extrusions, that's the scale on which things are done today. So that, this is nothing fantastical. Sure, we need to develop all of this to do it on the moon, but it's entirely foreseeable. And so then Lunar Olympic Games, the preparation obviously from now will take decades. So it's not too soon to start planning. And I and Mr. Arai, who works with me on this, think this will be extremely beneficial economically, socially, and politically. And one of the reasons why it's good is it'll bring in a whole range of new companies which are not involved in space activities to date, and not least the marketing. Sell the sizzle, not the steak. Anyone who hears the word Lunar Olympics never forgets it. Okay, so it's a fantastic marketing slogan, and there'll be massive opportunities just at the bottom here in the media alone. Games, movies, music, talent agencies, and so on. But sports is very good for young people. It's hugely popular, and the Olympics this year is a terrible sort of being suppressed kind of thing, so it's not as big a pizzazz as it would normally have. But participating in sports seriously is very, very good for young people. And so Lunar Olympics is a wonderful sort of target to look at. And further, the aviation industry, civil air travel, involves about 100 million people around the world. Now, it's all been suppressed because of the lockdowns and stuff, but there's no reason why we shouldn't go back to that 100 million. And I don't see any reason why space travel won't grow as big as air travel, which means about 100 million jobs around the world, which is terrific. I mean, because of these rapid development of self-driving trucks and blockchain and so on, there's plenty of serious predictions of very serious unemployment in the near future, so that we need some major new industries like this, which can grow to a huge scale. And also, if you think about it, developing this will involve a huge amount of aerospace technology. Well, one of the problems of the world today is that you probably know the American economy spends $1 trillion a year on military and security stuff. It's as much as the rest of the world put together. And so even if they wanted to, say, cut that in half, which they easily could, it would cause a terrible depression. So we need some other activity to wean them off making weapons. And so building these 7 infrastructures in space will be able to help displace this just sort of accidentally dysfunctional military excess. And so we should remember in 1985, NASA, this is great language, NASA was given the task, in the Commercial Space Act, to seek and encourage to the maximum extent possible the fullest commercial use of space. It doesn't do that. It does basically nothing for space tourism. So space agencies should get on with it now, finally, and use their immense know-how to help the development of low-cost orbital passenger-carrying space lines. Just a few % of their budgets. You know, NASA gets 30 billion a year. ESA gets billions a year. Lots of different countries spend billions a year. A few % of that would allow us to get these passenger-carrying space lines underway, and more or less the rest will follow. Though, of course, agencies can do developing the lunar infrastructure and then developing the technology for construction on the moon will be absolutely great. And so Lunar Olympic Games we see as a wonderful sort of slogan, really, or sort of target for many, many people. And it will bring in, as I said, lots of new companies and create really innumerable new business opportunities. So that's our pitch. Thanks very much for listening. So
I enjoyed that.
Yeah. Thanks very much for that, Patrick.
Thank you, Patrick.
And the only thing I would change about that is, rather than NASA having to spend some of their budget on this, the USA's defense budget is what, 40, 50 times that of NASA?
Yes, indeed.
So if they were to cut that by perhaps half of 1%, that would easily outstrip what NASA could put into this.
Yes.
Really make that much difference to the Department of Defense? We're getting into other realms of the discussion here, so I'll just hold that for the moment.
So then we need to rush on. I'll introduce the next speaker, Sam Coniglio, who is a writer, a photographer, an inventor, and a private space industry advocate. His cocktail making robots have been showcased on the Discovery Channel and made the cover of the Wall Street Journal, a pretty unique achievement. Samuel's research with the Space Tourism Society in the United States is featured on the History Channel's The Universe TV show. His zero gravity cocktail glass project, a great subject, won international acclaim and reinvents the concept of how to drink liquids in a zero gravity environment. I hope he's going to talk about that next. So he's also writing a book on designing the orbital lifestyle, showcasing designs of creature comforts for future off-world travelers, which we hope to see very soon. You know, once we have reusable orbital vehicles, the hotel industry is going to explode, and Sam will become a key designer. Great to have you, Sam.
Thank you very much, Patrick. You've been an inspiration for me and for space tourism for many, many years, and thank you for keeping the going.
Great.
Okay. Shall we switch?
You just need to stop your screen share, Patrick.
Oh, yeah?
Yes.
Sorry, just a mo then. Where do I do that?
Up at the top of the screen.
There's a green bar with a small red button next to it that says stop share.
Okay, just a minute. Sorry.
Right at the very top of your screen.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, has it switched? I didn't do it.
That was it. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, my screen sharing is still disabled. Keep hitting the share screen button that says disabled. Post it.
Okay, yeah, I just had to switch it from Patrick to you, so it's on to you now.
Cool. Oh, excellent. Yeah. All right. Okay. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the opportunity for this stuff here. My name is Samuel Coniglio. I am a space activist and inventor for the last 30 years, and I've been involved in a wide variety of projects and organizations such as those shown here. Patrick just mentioned the Zero Gravity Cocktail Glass Project. I've also been an expert in cocktail robotics. I had a fascination with combining drinks and drink making through robotics, through entertaining in sort of ways. And also the Space Tourism Society, I've been involved with a lot of advanced designs for comfort for tourism. Also, the bottom you'll see the various organizations I've been involved in, but most especially the Space Tourism Society. My passion has been to improve living in space by adapting earthbound creature comforts to a strange environment. The term creature comfort is rather hard to define. It is based upon our personal preferences and habits, which we do nearly every day of our lives. This here is a very informal list from my friends. It's very personal. It's very much a very individual opinion as to what is considered creature comfort, but these are some of the top ones that gets everyone's attention. For 50 years, NASA and the other space agencies have been training people to adapt to off-world environments. I believe it is time to adapt the environment for humans. How do we make the simple things work better when there is no gravity or there are other challenges? Today, we will be talking about showers, the ultimate relaxation. Its challenge is to make a shower that works in zero gravity and improves one's physical, mental, and emotional state. We will briefly discuss previous designs and incorporate nature into the experience. The key to this is understanding surface tension. Based on my previous experience with the zero gravity cocktail glass project, I've learned that without gravity, water and other liquids stick to everything. It can make the most common experiences on Earth extremely challenging in zero gravity. During my research, I have learned there have been several attempts at shower designs by NASA, Russia, and the European Space Agency. The most famous design, of course, on the top left here is the shower in the Skylab space station back in the 1970s. Did you know that the Russians had several shower designs as well? The one at the bottom left was from the various Soyuz stations, the one in the middle from the Mir space station. And the final two are prototype designs that were done in later years. The one was done by an ISU graduate named Sospita Mahante, and on the far right is a shower concept by the European Space Agency. A survey of these early designs had several things in common. They were hard to clean. The air and water temperatures could not be regulated very well. The temporary nature of the shower structures made them difficult to set up and break down. In the end, the astronauts and cosmonauts preferred a wet towel bath because it was simpler to deal with. Here is my design. I call it the shower in the garden concept. It is closely based upon the cylinder design from Marco Bernasconi and his team in 2006. What I have done is enhance it with a hydroponic garden of moss plants. Plus, I improved the fundamentals of cleaning and washing. My apologies for this overly detailed slide. I will discuss some of the details in the next few slides. One of the challenges astronauts have is just getting the soap and water off their skin. It ends up a solution was created over 3,000 years ago. In ancient Greek and Roman baths, the bathers used a curved metal blade on a handle called a spittle for cleaning their bodies. There are modern versions of this device used for exfoliation of dead skin from the body. I propose a modern version of this device installed in the shower with an optional vacuum attachment to help suck the dirt, oil, and dead skin off the body. The shower head itself doubles as a hairbrush. It also has a button for turning on and off the water, which makes it more convenient than having to turn around and flip on and off the switch. This is a very common system in recreational vehicles and campers. Besides coating the inside of the shower cylinder with hydrophobic plastic that resists liquids sticking to it, I also propose a variation of a very commonly used automotive and household cleaning device. It is known as a squeegee. My version includes a vacuum attachment to suck away excess water while it is scraping off the surfaces. Hopefully, the squeegee plus the hydrophobic materials will be enough to clean up all the water inside the cylinder. I should also mention there's a continuous airflow from the top of the shower and a continuous vacuum at the bottom of the shower to direct the flow of the liquids and the debris. One of the astronaut comments of early showers was that the soaps were very harsh on the person's skin. There are many glycerin-based soaps that are quite safe for the skin and pleasant to use. These soaps are also safe in small quantities for plants. Also, essential oils could be used to improve the sensory experience, since in zero gravity, your nose tends to clog up. The next idea is to use the gray water from the shower to water the moss plants in the shower cylinder and at the same time create a psychological back to the nature experience. I also propose to extend the experience by putting the shower inside a hydroponic garden. That way, the gray water can be filtered directly to the other plants. As you see in the image here, this is an example prototype Lunar greenhouse at the University of Arizona. I thought it was a beautiful example of a hydroponic greenhouse in space. Yes, you can clean the gray water using UV light and charcoal filters, but there are many plants out there that are natural filters for pollutants. Please see my paper for details. I don't have enough time to dive into all of it. Finally, what is a good design without proper placement? Why not place a cylindrical shower near a window? The window itself is part of the spaceship, not the shower, obviously, but there is no reason you can't put them right next to each other. So imagine the sensory experience of being naked and warm, taking a shower surrounded by plants, and looking out the window to space. Thank you for your time.
What about the cost for that? Cheap?
This is just a concept. It's just a proposal. The cost, we'll get to that when we get to that. Were you able to hear my presentation? Did it come through?
Yeah, thanks very much, Sam. That was a really terrific, really great work. All the details you've gone into to think about the things, and I want it. And what about the cost? It's just part of a hotel. Once we get serious hotels
I mean, it
in
seems
orbit,
like it would be inexpensive.
yeah, mass production, straightforward.
And where it sits and how to get the water out, it seems like it would be inexpensive.
Yeah, and having the plants inside the shower, really great. So thanks very much, Sam.
It's all about the design.
Yeah. So we're doing this, we're just to keep to this timetable. So we can't really have a discussion now, but we'll have that at the end. So then, Jerry, your turn.
Okay, or rather it's the turn of Bruce MacKenzie. Anyone who was in the sessions yesterday will know how much I admire Bruce's work. He's been involved with the Mars Societies pretty much since its beginning, particularly on the subject of habitats and settlements on Mars in one way or another. Today, he's going to cover a particular aspect of this, which is the lower than Earth gravity. Now, I talked about the Island Zero concept yesterday, and said how we can have these structures rotating to provide not 1G, but 0.9, 0.8, 7, and so forth. But when you're on a surface like the moon or Mars, the gravity level is fixed. And Bruce poses the question of what happens when you raise children under a gravity level that's lower than Earth. He said that this is not so much a presentation, but instead questions to spur discussion, and I'm sure that they will. So over to you, Bruce.
Hello, thank you. So I'm also it's also on the topic of raising children in remote environments. For example, what support do you need? Is it ethical to raise children away from the Earth? This was actually grew out of some discussions I led. A few times I would reserve 30 or 60 minutes at a conference and lead an audience discussion, trying to get everybody to talk among each other. And that's what I was hoping to do today, but we're only allocated 10 minutes and any discussion needs 30 or 60 minutes. So what I'm going to do is list the questions that I would pose to an audience, but not give you time to talk about it. And if anybody would like me to lead a discussion, if you have a group of 20 to 40 people who get together for meetings, I'd be happy to dial in remotely and show these questions and try to lead a discussion. I've never actually done this remotely, but people are getting more and more accustomed to remote meetings because of the pandemic. So let me share my screen. Okay, you should be able to see a screen that says Raising the First Families in Space. If I'm doing this at a Mars Society convention, I call it Raising the First Children on Mars. And let me close that window. Nah, it is not acting properly. All right, and I'm deliberately leaving the 4 slides on the left-hand side so you can see what is coming and the previous thing. That is my email address on the first and last slide. Feel free to write me if you want to participate or sponsor one of these discussions. Address is bmackenzie@alum.mit.edu. Okay, so if I have a room full of people and they want to talk about it, the problems and advantages and ethics of raising children in space or on Mars, here's sort of the outline. I have slides on why or why not to raise children, what support you might need. Will the adults be too busy? Might the children be raised by grandparents or aunts and uncles? When might it happen? And ethics. Is it ethical to have a child in a place that might be unsafe? Now, bear in mind that's been done throughout human history. And a little side note, in the lower right is a girl who is in orbit. She has experienced weightlessness. She is bouncing on a bed in her room, but when she's actually in midair, she has experienced weightlessness. And then I intersperse slides full of questions with slides full of pictures. So in the lower right, you can think about, well, the 2 lower ones. Do you want to bother having spacesuits for every size child as they grow? The girl in the upper right is also in orbit, experiencing weightlessness. She is in a suborbital trajectory inside the bedroom of her house. And she's in orbit around the center of the Earth, and her orbit is about to intersect her bed, and she's going to come to a crashing stop. But anyway, that's kind of fun things to talk about. And in the upper right, there's a baby in what we call a baby bouncer. And it's a good way to learn to strengthen leg muscles and feel what it's like to have weight on their legs. And it might be that children may learn to walk earlier if they are in less gravity, because their leg muscles don't have to be as strong to support their weight in a lower gravity field like Earth, like Mars or Luna, the Earth's moon. However, they may not be coordinated enough to walk. So that's an interesting issue. So here's one of the slides that I present to an audience and try to get the audience members to talk about reasons that you might have children at a settlement away from the Earth. And I go through and I list some of the reasons. Sometimes I tell a little story. It's kind of human destiny to have families and want to raise children. It would emphasize that the settlement is permanent. You want to make your settlement safe for the next generation, for a good 50 or 100 years. There's psychological advantages to the parents. Middle topic, it would be of great interest to children on Earth if they can see videos of children their own age on Mars. It might and there's a question, if it remains very expensive to launch people from the Earth to another location, you might actually might be comparable cost, possibly lower cost to raise humans, in this space element, especially if you get out to the outer solar system or interstellar space. So, another reason to raise children in space is it's an interesting topic for discussion groups like this. And then I show some pictures that I've collected, as the audience members are discussing it. And then I have a slide reminding people there's a lot of reasons not to have to have children in space. The equipment, the safety, bad publicity back on Earth if something happens to a child. What if there's a rebellious teenager who doesn't want to be there, is threatening to open the airlock, threatening to sabotage things. The second to last bullet point, little choice for the child. But this has been going on throughout history. Throughout history, people have taken their families or moved to another place and then had children. And the child doesn't have a choice before they're born. I sometimes tell little stories as we go along. For example, I was in Berlin many years ago and bought a little child's puppet from a street vendor, and his girlfriend came up, who was obviously pregnant. And she asked me, what's it like in the countries I visited? She was trying to decide what country to move to have her child. Where should her child grow up? Interesting topic. I try to get the audience to talk about different family models, two parents and kids versus the grandparents stay home while the parents are outside in their suits, working in the unpressurized environment. Maybe the grandparents would raise the children. This has been going on for generations and generations. There's some science fiction stories about group marriages in space. There's the adage, it takes a village to raise a child. That is, all of the adults in the area that take some responsibility for helping to raise the children and keep them safe and teach them things. Don't forget, there's a lot of equipment you need. Do you want to have pets for the children to raise? Do you need extra radiation protection as their body is growing, as their cells are dividing, etc. And once in a while, that's a different slide. Ethics. Is it ethical to raise a child in a place where, say an asteroid could hit your settlement and you lose all the air? Now, there are dangers on Earth too. So, and will the children be happy if they were raised in space? Should they be given the right to return to go to Earth at no cost? Would they be even able to go to the Earth if they had been raised in lower gravity? Might their bones or muscles just not allow it? There's a question in the lower left, the hand reaching toward the planet Mars. Is it right for us to appropriate Mars, to claim Mars for our children? Incidentally, in the upper left, there's these are 4 cadets in Star Trek Next Generation, and there was a 5th cadet who died in a training accident, and they're having an inquiry. So, raising teenagers, educating them about morals, things like that are issues. And those are all the slides. As I say, this would normally take 30 to 60 minutes and have a lot of audience discussion. And my timer says I have 18 seconds left. There's my email address again, if you would like to participate in a discussion like this. Thank you very much. And back to Jerry or Patrick.
Thank you very much, Bruce. And also thank you for keeping to time, which is always appreciated. So many questions raised there. I'm going to say, but when you first moved on to discussing ethics, my immediate thought was, would it be ethical to raise children in an environment in which they might not be able to go to Earth? So if they are born and raised in a 130 G, that is Mars, would they ever be able to adapt to Earth? It goes more for the moon.
Yeah, Jerry, normally I would throw that to the audience and I'd say, would someone else address Jerry's point? And I try to stop talking. But because we don't have good feedback from the audience, let me say, a lot of people think that if you were raised in 3/8 gravity or 1/6, your muscles and bones would not allow you to spend much time on Earth unless you were very, very careful. You might have to have a wheelchair available if you were out walking around more than a few minutes. You could also exercise before you go. But I think the future Martians and lunar inhabitants would feel the Earth's gravity is oppressive, that it's a burden, and they would choose not to go to Earth.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I've seen bits on this where
but throughout history,
who would want to go to Earth? It's a dirty place, and you hurt yourself. Anyway, let's leave that for a bit later.
Bruce, if you could stop your screen share.
Jerry, just one.
And I'll pass back to Patrick to introduce our final speaker in this session.
Yeah, Jerry, throughout history, parents have made those decisions. They have moved to, say, a new country that has a different language, and the children really can't go back to a different country that has a different language.
Yeah, so that there are analogues to this situation.
Okay, then.
Okay,
thank you very much.
Back to you then. Fascinating
speech, Bruce. Many thanks. And so the last speaker today is Dr. Marie-Luise Heuser. Are you here?
She just left.
Let
you know, sorry, it's too late for me here in Germany. It's 3 o'clock in the night. I wish you good discussions.
Oh, well, how very sad indeed. Let me just introduce her, since I've got her bio then, and we can think about what we might have missed. She's a philosopher and university lecturer at the universities of Düsseldorf, Stuttgart, Heidelberg, and Braunschweig. Most recently at the Institute of Space Systems at the Technical University of Braunschweig. Her main research interests are the philosophy of space travel, theories of space since antiquity, philosophy of technology in science fiction, philosophy of nature, metaphysics, ontology, and anthropology. And she gives a list of some of her books. which include trans-terrestrialism in the Renaissance, including Nicholas von Kois, Giordano Bruno, and Johannes Kepler, and then Russian cosmic and extraterrestrial supremacism, space philosophy, space travel and space travel philosophy from 1600 to 1900, and return to the moon, and energy transition, environment, return to the moon, and Husserl's phenomenology of flying. So she's clearly doing very, very great sort of deep research into our thinking about humans thinking about space and space travel. So I'm very sorry that she's bailed out just now. So I think Jerry is in England, so you're at 2 o'clock, and others are maybe still at a reasonable time. Thanks for staying up so late. That does mean we have a few minutes to have some discussion for anyone who wants to continue. So does anyone have a comment or question to any of the speakers today? I've got a question I'd like to put to Sam, if I may, then, just to say I read about the cocktail, the zero gravity cocktail glass some years ago, but I never twigged it was you. Great. And has anyone used it in zero gravity, like in a zero parabolic flight or in the space station?
On the ISS? Well,
if you had a few hours and a couple of cocktails, we can have a long chat about that.
I'd look forward to it.
It's long story short, I tried to create a company called the Cosmic Lifestyle Corporation. We tried to market the glass, and we tried several attempts to actually monetize the product. We even worked with some various liquor corporations. We tried to work with Virgin Galactic. We had a lot of close calls, but nothing. It was just basically a whole series of bad luck that happened. The concept design was great. We had a good team of advisors, including Richard Garrett, who was one of the early space tourists who flew. We even had some awesome 3D printing from Autodesk Corporation. They helped. They gave us, got us a couple of good 3D prints as well. It was a great experiment. We came extremely close to raising funds on a Kickstarter to raise funds to actually do a zero-G flight with it. But unfortunately, it didn't turn out exactly the way I wanted. So
it's got a future
there. But well,
don't worry.
The idea is there.
Once the hotel's there, the bars will have these lined up.
Yes. References to cocktails reminds me of a line from a book. I'm pretty sure it's by Robert Heinlein, of the space engineer. Slightly the worst for alcoholic wear, who pointed out to a barman, I've burned more alcohol in 60 seconds than you've ever sold across this lousy bar. Bruce, you recognize that, don't you?
Sounds about right, actually. Yes.
Yeah. Talking about bars, though, you may know one of Robert Heinlein's short stories about time travel is about a barkeeper floating in a space hotel. It's you know, the time travel stories where if they're well written, it's very difficult to work out where the floor is, you know, and the bartender has been there forever. And I think talking about bars, yeah.
One of the big challenges here is if we're really going to design, if we really want to make life off world comfortable and safe, we just need to start working on it. My fantasy, of course, is to actually get a hold of some of the major corporations, like you did, Patrick, talking with Honda and other folks like that, to actually start designing futuristic transportation systems. I would love to talk to Toto, the Japanese toilet company, and see if they would like to reinvent the space toilet. They are the perfect company for this.
Well,
I'd love
actually,
to talk to them.
There's another company which I think is better, which I've long wanted to go and talk to, which is Jamco. You know Jamco, because they make all the toilets in Boeing aircraft.
Oh, okay.
So they're much closer than Toto, actually. Yeah.
I'll have to look that up.
Yeah.
The alcohol joke reminded me about there was a group in Huntsville that was making hybrid rockets with some kind of rubber, very similar to asphalt, and nitrous oxide as the oxidizer. And their motto was, "We are paving the way to the moon and laughing all the way." That's and the laughing gas.
Very
With that,
good.
I'm going to mute my microphone for a minute.
Well, this is
No problem.
this is part of what Mr. Arai was talking about. Makoto Arai was talking about. You know, bringing in companies which have nothing to do with space so far. Alcohol and humans. I mean, if humans are there, there's going to be alcohol, and so some of the alcohol companies are big marketers. You know, big advertising budgets, and as soon as they see an opportunity which they think will enhance their image, you know, they could be big supporters, and so the Lunar work, it should bring on a lot of additional interest. I didn't talk today, but about Mr. Maezawa, who you may know is a Japanese billionaire, still a young guy in his 40s, who is due to fly around the moon in Starship once it gets operational. And he's got a huge following. He has millions of followers, you know, because he set up this company, which is just a online fashion company. Very entertaining and, you know, imaginative, energetic young guy, you know. If he gets to fly around the moon with his friends, that'll just cause a storm in Japan of publicity for, you know, this is real now. This is going to happen. So
Well,
But also he
the
decided he
extra
would take
seats
the
going to be artists?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He
Right,
said
right.
he's choosing a group of international artists
Mm.
to go with, and
I
then
think it's
then he
fantastic.
said there would be nobody else. Then he said, okay, maybe an astronaut or two, and we got to fly that thing. But that's a bit iffy. One of the iffiness is he was first going to do that and make it into a show like The Bachelor, and then the girls would be potential girlfriends. You know, I mean, something silly like that, which was going to have a lot of media and that kind of stuff. Then somehow it changed. He got with Elon, and then Elon liked the art. So now the thing is, artists will come back and they'll make a lot of art that makes people happy, and it will, you know, draw them together and things like that. So now he's sort of pitching that, but it's got to be a lot less artists now. It used to be like,
Well,
12.
I can give him a shopping list of artists that are ready to go right now, including me. So there are a lot of folks who do this.
He's been, I don't know how he's going to do that, choose his list. He wanted one producer, one dancer, one, you know, visual artist, one photographer, one something else, one musician.
I got a ton of people in LA ready to go, and in San Francisco ready to go. We're ready to rock. So
Sure.
just give us a call. Yeah, I mean, entertainment sells. People pay attention to entertainment. People will spend a huge amount of budget on entertainment. And the wealthier people will spend even more money on that. I mean, the idea of super yachts, millionaires and billionaires buying these boats, 100-foot-long yachts just for their own personal entertainment. These TV shows and contests and entertainment, Las Vegas, people spend tons of money on entertainment. If you apply that to space, you're going to get a lot of attention. So that marketing, it's a balance, trying to find the right balance of how we can get people excited about space. And of course, you know, sell the products, get the attention, trace the funding for doing the actual flights.
Documentaries are going to be made out of that.
I'll just, Arai-san, are you there? Because maybe Mr. Arai, Makoto-san?
Yes.
Have you had any contact with Mr. Maezawa about his project?
Not yet so far, but my colleague has been supporting him, and so I mean my colleague means a member of the Dentsu Space Lab. But it's you know, underway and confidentially progress. So I have no information so far, but
Okay.
I talk about one thing is the art is very expensive, and when some artist will create something, and it would be worth, I mean, very, very high price, and maybe he or she can get the fee or expense cost for traveling by the his or her output. Yeah, and one point is but Tom Cruise is now going to ISS, I heard, and maybe that would be big impact for the consumers, or I mean, general public. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, thanks very much.
Yeah, I mean, Axiom Space has a couple space tourists, and there are a few others that have been announced. I mean, yes, the first ones are going to be the rich guys, granted, but the idea is they are flying, or where they will fly, and the more people who fly, the more other people will fly. You just have to break down those doors. We had 9 people fly. I think it was 9 people fly since 2001, since Makoto when he flew and just broke that psychological barrier of like, yeah, it's okay to pay money to go and just hang out in space, which NASA said, no, you can't do that. And Patrick and I went through that whole battle trying to convince NASA it's okay for people to be a tourist. It's okay. The T word is not a bad word. And for decades, NASA was horrified by the concept of tourism. Now they've changed their mind, well, at least most of them, not all of them. And it is time to start looking at public-private partnership, cross-industry collaboration with industries like I was mentioning, like the toilet companies and other industries that had zero interest in space initially. But once they start doing a space-related project, suddenly you've got attention around the world marketing-wise. So you're not just simply building toilets, you're building this super toilet for space. And that alone is going to get a lot of attention. Like, oh my goodness. Case in point, Procter & Gamble this past week just announced they're going to be doing laundry experiments to figure out how to wash laundry in space. One of the biggest problems on the International Space Station is they cannot clean clothes. Water is a precious resource. You can't just there is no laundry machine. You can't spend the time and energy in space putting a laundry machine to clean your clothes. So what happens is that the astronauts bag up their clothes, and every few months they put it on a Progress shuttle, and it burns up in the atmosphere. Lots of waste. So that's another example of how get a Procter & Gamble or a washing machine, Maytag, some company that does this stuff in the earthbound version, get an R&D team to start working on a spacebound version. Which, by the way, I'll stop in just a second, bear with me. By designing something for space that's highly efficient with water usage and energy usage, guess what? It becomes a great, powerful product to use on Earth because we are in these energy efficient, these terrible times with the environment and wasting water and recycling. And these new technologies designed for space will also benefit Earth.
Sam, if I could jump in there. When Peter Glazier was working for Arthur D. Little in Cambridge, Massachusetts, that his company was given a contract by NASA to develop a washing machine explicitly for the space station. This was early in the space station planning stages. And one story is that they developed what became the front-loading washing machine. That is, the clothes don't sit down, the water doesn't sit down, and by shifting the tub back and forth, they could operate that washing machine in zero gravity. However, NASA never followed through to develop the final machine or to launch it. And I'm sure it would have paid for itself by now. Another story is I was told that every day, every astronaut on the space station or in shuttle gets a little towel, a little bigger than a hand towel, but way too small to be a bath towel. And when they don't take a shower, it's bigger than they need, but they throw it away. And when they do take a shower, it's not nearly enough. And so all these towels have been burned up in the upper atmosphere. That's all.
Yeah. I do have an RV. I have a recreational vehicle. I go camping a lot nowadays. And so I've learned the lessons of camping and how you have to ration water, ration food. I've done sponge baths. I've got baby wipes for doing quickie, bits and bits and all that stuff. Wash it real quick. And then I have to be very careful about my water usage and cleaning. Going to the bathroom is very interesting because the gray water and black water tanks in the RV are very limited. Same issue in the space station. So a lot of the stuff that's happening in the space station is very similar to the concept of camping. My goal is to break out of this very conservative, we must do very little things to survive, and start expanding to have comfort and enjoyment and convenience. The idea of convenience in space, being able to really wash your clothes, wash your hair. How do you shave? How do you drink tea? Can you smell the tea? What kind of food can you make? Can we diversify the cooking techniques, the cooking temperatures? Can you build an oven that works in space instead of a hot plate? They basically have a glorified hot plate. There's all sorts of issues that have to be things that have to be reinvented because surface tension issues, the lack of convection current, all sorts of factors we never thought of before. We can reinvent these common appliances in this new environment.
And you've got the lunar surface as not just zero gravity, but what you're doing, studying your life in the camper is just like what Toyota must be doing now with their lunar cruiser. And as soon as you say that in a cup of tea, of course, Japan, they don't so much drink milk tea, but they have rice and stuff. So that the fitments for your lunar cruise will be quite different according to the different countries where people want to, from which people will be buying them. So that
by the way, we started the Mars Homestead Project. This is within the Mars Foundation, partly to answer questions like that. Could you use very simple technologies, some from 100 years ago, maybe with a lot of greenhouse plant products, to solve those everyday living problems, rather than the most high-tech solution you can come up with? How do you make soap if you don't have a big chemical plant? Well, the pioneers did it, but they used ashes from their fireplace. Well, we don't have fireplaces, so it's complicated. That's all.
I designed an art studio for what was a rocket, what would now be the ISS, I suppose. 38 years ago, sent it to NASA, and they haven't phoned me yet.
Yeah, keep in mind, NASA's been focused on just the engineering technology side of things, and rarely do they talk about creature comforts unless it's of benefit to them. I'm so grateful that Lavazza invented an espresso machine, the ISS Espresso. It flew up in 2016. There is also an example of a zero gravity coffee cup, which was the inspiration for our glass project that flew up around the same time. So now there is a decent cup of coffee that can be made because of this special machine. They can make espressos and coffees and teas in space.
Because it's big stress relief. They're not realizing how stress relief that shower is.
Well, the psychology is a big factor.
Yeah.
I've done a lot of research on explorers who go to Antarctica and going to climbing the mountains and how they figure out how to keep themselves alive. Actually, my work was actually published in a book recently called Alcohol in Space. There's an actual book called Alcohol in Space by Chris Carberry. And he talks about this, how explorers in, I think it was Shackleton's expedition in Antarctica, I think a third to a half of their supplies was just alcohol, beer and rum, because it's a harsh environment. No one wants to be there. Well, they're there for exploration, but it's a harsh place to be. You're roughing it all the way. But if you have a drink or two, I can just deal with the roughness for a little bit longer. You just keep on going. It sounds crazy, but in modest amounts, it's all right.
Yeah, that's right. Your list of creature comforts was great, Sam. As you said, people have a quite different range of what they need as their basic creature comforts. And then just what you said there, if you can't have most of them, what's the last one you want? Well, a bit of alcohol would help in a lot of situations, because it kind of would numb you to the terrible situation you're in.
And humans have been very adept at making alcohol out of all sorts of weird things.
Oh, you bet. Yeah.
Let me point out, those of you who are watching live on YouTube, we're trying to monitor it, and if you have any questions, type it into the YouTube chat. We'll try to see it. There's a little bit of a time delay. By the way, the Russians have been sending vodka up to their early space stations. I don't think they do it to ISS anymore. I heard a woman from Massachusetts was on the payload systems team, and they developed a experiment and got permission to launch it to the Mir space station. And because they were such male chauvinists over in Russia, they invited her to the launch pad, up the tower, and she delivered this payload for them to pack into the cargo compartment. And she said they didn't bother with a manifest. They just had a bunch of things to pack in. They didn't plan ahead what was going to go where. It was just some guy as if he was packing, the station wagon to go on vacation. And he was slipping in a few bottles of vodka in places where he thought they wouldn't break. So that's all.
Yeah, Richard Garrett says that cognac was the drink of choice for the Russians up on the ISS. The astronauts don't officially partake, but he knows the Russians, they have a little cognac with a little straw and that type of thing. But moving on to other topics.
Yeah, the thing for me is, once you have hotels, you have the everyday life in space. And so everything that we all experience, having a haircut, what happens to your hairstyle once you're living in zero gravity? And, clothes and interior design. Interior designers are going to have great fun because up and down disappear, And so from the story about the original Skylab, they said people split into two. Some liked a feeling of up and down, so they designed some rooms up and down. But others liked there was a part of the Skylab system where there was kind of 7 different directions you could move in, where you really were completely away from gravity up and down. And some people preferred that, So there's going to be, like, do you put carpeting on the walls or you do put wallpaper on the floor? So that there's such a range of opportunities for people who haven't been involved in space so far to get involved, that it's going to be really a terrific space renaissance. That's what it's going to be.
One of the things about Skylab was that there was more volume available to them. They were able to do some things that we haven't seen in space since then. I showed a video with Jerry a little while ago of running a running track that was set up. I actually still have that video. I was gonna, actually, I think I will just play it for a little bit right here.
It's not just the running track. I mean, Pete Conrad actually was a tumbler, and he did all kinds of acrobatics as he went around that ring. And it was fantastic. I mean, the closest we've seen to that was 2001: A Space Odyssey inside the Discovery space station.
I believe that running track was not deliberately.
Oh no,
it was
storage compartments.
Walkers, yes.
Right.
And I have a story to tell about visual too. Although, why don't we watch this video, whatever it is? Yeah.
Wow, that's really historic, great bit of video. And was
that Skylab?
Yes, that was Skylab.
Yes,
which was it was the second stage, wasn't it, from the Saturn V rocket?
Yeah, the third stage of the Saturn V.
Yeah,
and what you have to remember,
huge space,
what you have to remember about that was that the S4B diameter was 28 feet, whereas the ISS modules, which had to be able to fit in the payload bay of the space shuttle, were a maximum 15 feet. So this is twice the diameter, so 4 times the cross-section area.
Yep.
Huge space.
Huge amount of space. Absolutely amazing.
By running in that circle, they actually experienced enough artificial gravity to get traction on their feet.
Yeah,
that's right. A little bit of centrifugal force. They should make a few more of those old fuel tanks and send them up to the space station.
Oh yeah, I really wanted them to save all of the old shuttle external tanks, link them together and then sell them to, I think his name is Tom Rogers, to build a space station. But I believe they threw away about 5,000 kilograms of propellant in every tank because they didn't dare have the engines run dry. And that propellant, if they could have harvested it, might have paid for keeping the tank in orbit.
Boost it.
Yeah.
This is the kind of thing that will happen sort of automatically once companies are doing it, because companies' objectives are quite different from space agencies' objectives. They're there basically to cut costs if they can.
Yeah, by the way, I have some back of the envelope designs for space stations made out of great big fuel tanks, if anybody wants to join me. So
that's an old classic one, yes.
Yeah,
but there's some neat things going on with Bigelow Aerospace, Axiom Space. It's got a neat business model. In fact, I don't know if you guys have been following Axiom Space and what they're doing. they're consisting of all like retired NASA astronauts and managers and execs from the space station program at JSC. So they're very well connected. And B, they're designing the modules one at a time to fly up to the ISS, stay in the ISS for a while, so they get enough pieces together, and then they're going to separate, become its own separate private station.
In the same orbit as
In the same orbit as ISS, but the problem, to me, after 30 years, you finally figure out it's not about the technology, it's about who you know. It's all about who you know at NASA and all the other space agencies, and that's how you get to fly. So the fact that Axiom Space, the company, consists of several leaders who were involved with the International Space Station construction and management, and several former NASA astronauts, they're all speaking the same language. They all know who's who inside NASA. So when they wanted to come up and create a company and then say, hey, we need to connect the International Space Station, and you and I, we all know how difficult it is to get anything up on the ISS unless you know all the protocols with payloads or go through nanoracks. These guys just call up friends and say, hey, we want to do this thing. What do you think? And they started the whole ball rolling.
The Japanese module of the space station, they are soliciting commercial uses of that. So again, I'll just ask Arai-san if he knows. Arai-san, do you know about that?
No, I have no information about that.
I just checked YouTube. There's no questions for us on YouTube.
That's okay. I'm loving the free-form conversation. This is great.
Yeah, obviously, all the YouTube viewers are just stunned by what we're doing.
I'd like to send up a hotelier in space. You'd have a competition among hoteliers around the world and send the winner up. Because as a hotelier, they'd just be thinking from beginning to end, you know, what's attractive to customers, what's not attractive to customers, what you should do, and so on. It would be really one of the most valuable people, I think, at the moment to send up to the space station.
What facilities would you like to offer?
Yeah. I mean, their whole business is giving people a good time. So that.
Well,
one of the concepts we talk about at the Space Tourism Society is the orbital super yacht, because more than likely it's going to be a Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk type person who's going to be the first one out there who could afford their own standalone vehicle, and maybe from there they team up with Princess Cruise Lines or someone like that to build a full larger vessel. But the idea is it's probably going to be one of these wealthy individuals who will fund a privately owned spacecraft for their friends, whatever. It will be of a modest size, maybe using a series of Bigelow modules, maybe something with Axiom, with the solar panels, with the space showers I was talking about, with a bunch of the luxury things. The big difference between space tourism and what you see on the International Space Station is design. Designing for cleanliness, designing for people, designing for luxury. When you create a habitat for tourists who are not scientists, not engineers, who don't have to know that behind that button is a wire that connects to a capacitor that connects to this other circuit that connects to this other circuit to make all these things work. They just work. You don't have to worry about that. As a tourist like you and me, we just want to hop on board and play and not have to worry about these technical details. What if something blows up? Hopefully there's crew on board to deal with that type of stuff. And also a whole fleet of robots, flying robots that constantly clean, monitor the atmosphere for poisons, vacuum alerts, things like that. And everything else is designed to be clean as much as possible. I'm thinking a super yacht would be the first step for a full cruise ship because of costs and design. It's stepping stones. How do we get to that next point? Who's going to pay for it? How do we make it happen? My 2 cents.
Although you might really consider how useful they can be as well.
When it comes to pleasure craft, use is not the thing.
Let me finish.
Sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
I had heard that tourists want to be experiential. They want to be there, experience everything else. They can have a project to do that is something of science, that they then feel like they're an astronaut. You know, they have a function. They will bring back home something valuable. You know, I mean, so you could consider an overlay that there's that group of people, you know, who not just who want to just sit back and look out the window, but mix it up. Like also thinking,
you're right.
If it's not
you're correct.
Taxpayer money, fine, but they should have some sort of ethics. And let's let them experience more than they expect. It's not just a cruise ship. You can actually be doing something valuable in space. And you can tell your grandkids about that, you know?
Yeah, I think all the tourists who have gone up so far have participated
Right,
in a meaningful
I mean,
way
they had to
in
be
some sort of project during their time.
like the one from South Africa. They hated that man. We were so poor, so desperate. This guy spends $1 million going up because he sold his IT company. They didn't know whether to like this guy, hate this guy. But there he was. He did something. He was assigned tasks. You know, he was part of the crew.
And I think he did
like
some
that.
educational work, didn't he? He did some work with school children.
So Shuttleworth. So then he
Yeah.
has a foundation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I think you should think more into it on what they can do really good for themselves and good for other people. And that's the high. That would be a real high for them.
Well, the good thing about the recent work by some of these billionaires is that other billionaires can see, hey, actually, it doesn't cost so much to do something useful. So I'm kind of hopeful that a few more billionaires are going to crop up, you know, and put their shoulder to the wheel.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't. I can't remember whether it's Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos. So I think it cashes in. Is it $10 billion worth of shares in his company each year to go into?
Yeah, so Jeff Bezos, who founded Amazon, has said he will cash in $1 billion worth of Amazon shares every year to invest in Blue Origin and try to catch up. And also he's going to resign from being CEO of Amazon. He'll stay chair of the board of directors, I think, so that he can, we think he's going to spend more time devoted to managing Blue Origin.
I mean, it's quite staggering, the potential of a position like that.
So it's kind of interesting. Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk have been running neck and neck to be who's the richest person in the world. And it varies from time to time as the stock prices vary. And Musk wants to set up a civilization on Mars. Jeff Bezos was inspired by Jerry O'Neill, who also inspired me, back when he was a student at Princeton University, the same university. And Jeff Bezos is enamored with the orbital settlements, formerly called space colonies, like Stanford Torus, Bernal Sphere, and Island 3. So it's going to be a race between the two richest people in the world of whether we establish civilization on Mars or in orbit first.
Well, as I said in my presentation, that the original Island 1 concept, the Bernal Sphere, was deliberately restricted in that the design had to be something that would cost no more than the cost of Apollo to implement, so that nobody could say we can't afford it. And so at the time, mid-70s, we were talking about 38 billion altogether, but it was expected that the construction of the habitat would take 7 years, and even just limiting the cost to those 7 years, $1 billion, you know, I mean, you're looking at what, $5.5 billion per year. Now, okay, we now need to adjust that for inflation, but here's the are willing to put aside $1 billion a year, and you think, well, kickstarting the construction of an Island 1 settlement, you know, isn't beyond us. And by producing things like solar power satellites and selling off the electricity from that, you'd actually get the money back after a while. So it's not as though it's you're just putting it in and the money goes forever.
I'd like to kind of propose a question that I guess each of you can weigh in on, kind of as a way to close out this session. The session's mainly been about culture, art, sports, making space livable. And my question is, with the initiatives that are coming up right now with the Artemis program, what do you think would be the one thing that they could incorporate into the Artemis program starting now, so that they have time to really build it up and really make it a part of the program that would have an impact on the average everyday people here on Earth that involves art or culture or even sports? Bruce, you want to start?
No, I do not want to start. You caught me by surprise. I am not necessarily in favor of the current Artemis plans and NASA's proposal, the Lunar Gateway, all that stuff. I would much rather see a sustainable development in low Earth orbit. I'd send robots to the moon and I'd bring lunar soil back off the surface, and I would process it with solar powered industries in zero gravity. The lunar surface is not a great place to establish a small settlement if it's solar powered, or if you're trying to grow your own food. And by the way, I propose using rotating tethers to throw payloads back and forth. You can do that up to about 1 or 2 kilometers per second with almost no propellant. So you can throw the dirt off the moon, process it in orbit somewhere, use it to make steel, build a bulldozer out of it, send the bulldozer back to the moon.
But under the, I guess, in the spirit of what this particular session was about, which is culture, and yours was about children, actually, children in space. What would you think would be the next step toward realizing those goals?
I wasn't really sure what the topic of this subject was, but let me throw out one thing I've thought about. Take a big empty fuel tank, put a volleyball net around the middle of it, and have 2 teams on either side playing volleyball with the net around the outside, and the goal is to hit the far wall. And it's a big enough fuel tank that you can't guard the net. You have to jump and intercept the ball. So I'm changing your question because I didn't like the question. So go on.
That's something that's doable. That could be arranged. Sam, is that your finger up in the air there?
Yeah. I guess my 2 cents. I would say get some engineers and artists together in the same spacecraft and start thinking about how to reinvent how you live in space, how to make life better, safer, and easier, and just test it out. Artemis, I haven't really followed too much because I'm so cynical about NASA's ups and downs and their projects. Projects comes, projects go. But if Artemis actually happens, and if we have a multinational group going to the moon, great, that's awesome. They will have to learn very quickly how to survive mentally, physically, and everything else off the world and on the moon. And the moon is a great training base to start learning how to live on other planets. So let's just get there, test it out. Let's test all sorts of ways to farm. I mean, farming is going to be like the #1 thing for survival out there. You got to learn how to grow all sorts of plants out there, possibly fish, possibly other creatures, who knows. Work on the basic survival skills when you're on there. And then, of course, talk about the other things I was talking about with future comfort when it comes to shaving and showering and recycling and all those other things. Get some service robots to help maintain, do a lot of the boring and mundane and dangerous tasks. I'm even talking about designing clothing that has embedded sensors so you can check your health as well as detect radiation and other types of stuff. Really, design is my thing. And if they're going to make it to the moon, they need to design products and services going to make life convenient and simple for those people who are going to live there long term.
All right. Patrick?
Well, a great question, Kevin. Thanks very much. I have 2 specific things which I think the Artemis project, and I should just say, I hope that with the Chinese and Russian space base, pretty firmly announced, I think the Artemis project will go ahead. I mean, I hope this global competition drives it along. Two things. One is reusable passenger travel to orbit. Without reusable vehicles to orbit, any stuff on the moon is going to be terribly, terribly expensive and will wind down, I'm sure. Whereas once you get reusable transport, passenger transport up and down to orbit, then the whole lunar project, the cost dropped by about 90%. So that's number one. And the second one is that once they've established a base and got a bit of time to think what to do, I want them to prioritize research on construction on the moon. There's all sorts of scientific projects and other things they could do, but I think that construction, actually building stuff, learning how to build factories and hotels and dome cities is the economically most valuable thing to do. And once they can build a few buildings, then the hotel industry will just take over. So it's that's why I'm really very keen on the Artemis and the lunar base things, because I think it could really change everything. Thanks very much.
But on the arts and culture side, in terms of putting something up there that's going to make people feel more human.
Right. Well, on the arts and culture side, a sports arena. Build the bigger the chamber, the better. I mean, low gravity on the moon. Of course, orbit is fine, but the Artemis project is, which is the question, is really a lunar base. So build a big thing on a big structure on the moon. They might start with a big inflatable one, I guess. But I think aluminium and glass is. Aluminum glass technology, it's a hugely advanced field. It's really quite straightforward for them to say, okay, we're going to make glass and aluminium and so on the moon. And there's tons of work being done on it already. And so do that. And if they can film some people in low gravity, I like flying, but there's almost any sport is fun in low gravity. And the fans around the world will just go for it, I'm sure. And
like a big lunar bounce house.
That's right. Yeah, almost a swimming pool. A swimming pool. You'll be able to swim and then jump out of the water while swimming, like a dolphin. And the waves will be 6 times higher than they are on the ground. So it'll be so visually spectacular that I think people say, well, and by doing it, say, hey, it's not so far away. The moon is it's less than 400,000 kilometers away. It's really our neighbor. Right, so that I think doing some sports, but also just making what Sam was talking about. The people living in these moon bases are going to be first. They're going to, they're quite serious technical guys and women who are surviving kind of thing. But as soon as they have a little bit of free time, think how to make it more livable. What's their basic home comforts that they'd like? And anybody is interested in that because everybody has, we're all humans. We all have our daily home comforts. And so you talk about just what's the basic things they like and stuff. So there's tons of potential.
So Jerry, what about you? What do you think?
Well, first of all, with regard to swimming pools and so on, Jerry O'Neill discussed this with respect to the in-space habitats, Island 1, where as you got closer and closer to the central axis, then of course gravity diminishes. So at various levels away from the axis, you could have large swimming pools. And as you dived off a high board, then as you got further out, then gravity would increase. You'd have to take the habitat's rotation into account, so you didn't actually miss the pool completely on your way down. But he said that the idea of having a dive effectively in slow motion, because it could take 10 seconds before you hit the water, could be quite spectacular with regard to the moves that people would come up with. I mean, you think what people do in the Olympics at the moment, when they have, 1.5 seconds, this would be quite something.
Jerry, I have an image of Island 1 ready to share if you guys want to take this one.
I think I know the one you
but someone needs to enable sharing.
Go ahead.
Have time.
No, please.
The picture I showed of NASA's Lunar Stadium has diving in the background where the boards are about 50 meters above the.
No, this is something else. And also along the axis or very close to the axis, you can have human-powered flight. Just make sure that you know, you don't suffer from the Icarus effect and get too far out. Well, there's somebody with a motorized hang glider near the access, but
yeah. So one of the stories is from Jerry O'Neill's day is that inner cylinder would be a swimming pool, and it is rotating for gravity, and you're playing water polo. Someone passes the ball to you, the opponents converge, you have to pass the ball away. So you see your teammate over your head. So you're treading water, and your teammate is over your head treading water, looking back at you. You pass the ball to your teammate across the axis. Well, the swimming pool is rotating. The ball goes straight, but your teammate rotates out.
yes.
It looks as if the ball curves and gets intercepted. That's all.
Yeah, I mean the mechanics, the dynamics of sports under those conditions is really going to be very interesting.
Yeah, in zero gravity, a rotating stadium will be fascinating. As you say, the ball will appear to do this great helical course across the thing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Zero
It'll be
gravity.
fun to watch.
Makoto, Mr. Arai, what do you think? Do you have any thoughts on what would be the first art, sport, cultural event or activity we would want to take into space?
Yes, I think just one idea, that is the, we are now have an image. I mean, it's easy to live in ISS, but when it comes to the tourist interest, I think we would like to be out of ISS. In Japanese, uchu-yue, it's like a swimming in the universe. And if you can do this with the astronaut instruction outside of the ISS, I think much more people would like to go to ISS and enjoy them. Well, that's my one of my dreams.
All right.
I'm afraid this cannot be the answer of your question.
No, it certainly can be, setting up some sort of way for tourists to spacewalk safely in an environment that allows them to really experiment and swim or fly in the open space where they have the universe around them. I think that's very human and definitely something that many people aspire to.
But what they need is
right. And Barbara, I was going to come to you next as our observer and the resident artist here right now. What do you think?
I think those people need a good videographer that's following their moves.
Mm-hmm.
That's incredible. You need the best camera people and sound people. And then you will make art forever. And those people are forever grateful that you've captured them in such a way. You know, I mean, so we can't forget that. Mm-hmm. And as far as artists go, I think that we have to rethink so much. And we need to work with engineers to come up with the wherewithal to do the art outside of the ISS, like to paint in plein air, sitting there. I mean, regolith is a problem, but we have to sort this regolith problem out. Because I also thought one time that if you have buildings and they're all gray, mm-hmm. and the light up there is very intense, it's very dark and it's very light, and your eyes are going to be going crazy. You're in a helmet, then there's regolith, and you've just smushed it with your glove. If you can't find your way home, you need to have those buildings painted red, turquoise, whatever. And then on the horizon, you can locate yourself so easily because it's all monochromatic. So I mean, I
So
think
the art makes everything stand out.
painters could do their huge murals and, you know, lovely things like that, but
So
also
Jerry, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
to be able to draw and paint outside, but sculpture is going to be extraordinary, right? With the lack of gravity, they can sculpt anything. They can sculpt a mountain into something.
Mhm.
I mean, sculpture is going to be extraordinary, but I think the hardest thing to do is to sing because you have so little air.
All right. So Jerry and Patrick, what if we give Sam the last word? He's busting over with something to say here.
I could just make one comment about Makoto's comment about being outside. There's a little book called House in Space, which is about the astronauts who visited a Skylab. And there's a terrific short description by one of the guys who says he was on a mission outside. So he was doing a spacewalk. And you remember in those days, they had this completely transparent helmet. And he said he was standing on the outside of Skylab as it went from the light into the shade of the Earth. And he said it was the most amazing point of his life, where suddenly the entire space, where the stars are so bright, you know, he was alone, floating there in the dark with just the stars. He said it was totally lyrical in his description. So I agree, spacewalking must be going to be, you don't need to have maybe gloves and boots to do anything, but just to be able to float out there in the suit, yeah.
Having spent one night in the wilderness on a moonless night in a valley, so that the skies seemed to be the roof over the valley. The stars were so bright. I've always imagined what it must really look like in space, and have been maybe upset that no one's ever been able to actually capture that on film, or you know, in a camera or with video.
There are so many more stars than you see from
yes. But Sam, what? Go ahead.
You can use this to wrap up, maybe. I know that many artists got sponsorship from the European Space Agency to fly in their zero gravity aircraft, and there was a group, I believe, it was aerialists and acrobats that flew. And this might be a nice analogy. It's just having enough space to just play and dance and turn and spin and record that, of course, to show the world that this is what you can be as a human without the bounds of gravity. It would be an amazing thing to behold, to see dancers just synchronized, flying through the air or flying through the controlled environment of the vessel that you're in, and being able to do things that humans can't do on Earth.
Yeah, I've actually read a couple of short stories that revolved around a dancer and a videographer doing art in zero G.
But I also think you could I like smart art that does something else as well, scientific. And so if you had all kind of monitors on you whilst you're doing this, that, and the other, you are adding to the block of information about what's possible with humans.
Right.
Yeah. And I've seen a wedding dress designed for outer space so that the skirt looked fine when it kind of came up the sides. Looked cute, you know? They designed everything so it would look cute when it started going this way or whatever.
Yeah. Well, Jerry and Patrick, you guys want to kind of bring us to a close?
Yeah, I just want to comment on two things. I mean, earlier we were talking about alcohol in space. A few years ago, I met Peter Higgs, and this was, I think just a couple of months after the Higgs boson had been verified. And I said to him that I had been saying, I think for a couple of years at that time, that as and when that happened, the team at CERN should celebrate with a cocktail to be known as the Large Hadron Collider. So he liked that. Yeah, he did. The other thing is we've also been talking about art, and something I meant to mention in one of the art sessions was that I have produced some space art in the form of a poem. So my name is on a whole range of spacecraft, But when it came to the MAVEN Mars atmospheric orbiter a few years back, the outreach team didn't just ask for people's names, but they asked them to provide a poem in the form of a haiku. 3 lines, 5 syllables, 7 syllables, 5 syllables. And they said that I think it's that they would then be published and open to voting. And I think it was the top 200 would be included with the supporters' names on the DVD that would go on the spacecraft. So my one said, "We look out to space and Mars beckons us onward. Our future lies there." And they liked that, and that got a decent number of votes. So it's included on the DVD, which is currently in orbit around Mars. And so on my business card, the front has a picture and basic details, and on the back it lists freelance space presenter, fellow of the British Interplanetary Society, this, that, and the other. And at the bottom it says interplanetary poet. There's not many people who can make that claim.
Very good.
Thanks, Sam.
So
Patrick, you want to wrap up then?
Just wrap up by saying thank you to everybody. It was a really, really fun session. I mean, that's what space tourism is. It's fun, you know. And so thank you all for doing it. Thank you, Jerry, for staying up so late. I'm so sorry that Dr. Marie-Luise Heuser couldn't stay up so long.
Yeah. But then this is sort of early for me most days.
Makoto, did you have a last
Well,
word?
guys. Thanks, Kevin.
All right.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. It's been a pleasure.